Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go ahead and dive right in with a quick introduction. As you know, we're here to talk about family courts and what's going on in family courts across the country, and hopefully spend some time focusing on what those solutions are to help keep protective parents and their children safe. My name is Ashley Rumschlag. I am the National Director at DomesticShelters.org at the Alliance for Hope International. Really quickly, Alliance for Hope International is a national nonprofit dedicated to breaking the cycles of domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, and human trafficking. This organization works to create hope-centered communities where survivors can heal and professionals have the tools to provide compassionate, effective support. The Alliance is made up of several programs. The Family Justice Center Alliance brings together law enforcement, advocates, counselors, prosecutors, all under one roof. There are over 150 centers across the U.S. and abroad. The Training Institute on Strangulation Prevention is the nation's leading resource on one of the most lethal forms of abuse, strangulation. It trains professionals to identify and respond effectively. And as you all know, or maybe don't know, but strangulation is often the key predictor of future homicide. Camp Hope America is the first evidence-based mentoring and camping program for children impacted by domestic violence, helping them build resilience, self-esteem, and vision for a brighter future. And then we also support Voices survivor networks, which are part of the Family Justice Center Alliance, essentially groups where survivors can advocate for change and support one another. And then we also do work under the Justice Project, which connects survivors with trauma-informed legal professionals, specifically those who have lost a family member due to what we're terming as a hidden homicide, or a homicide where it was staged as a suicide, but then there were indicators of domestic violence. As I mentioned, am the director at DomesticShelters.org, which is one of the most comprehensive online resources for domestic violence information across the U.S. and Canada. This site connects millions each year to shelters, housing, legal help, educational content, serving survivors, advocates alike. So together, Alliance for Hope International and DomesticShelters.org are transforming the way communities respond to violence through collaboration, accountability, and most importantly, hope. So as I mentioned, we are here today. We're going to discuss the status of family courts in the United States. Just a little bit of context to share. I think this group is probably very aware of this issue, but always good to reframe where we're at. So each year, more than 500,000 couples in the US end their marriages. And for roughly 1 in 4 of them, domestic abuse is part of the story. That means tens of thousands of survivors are entering a family court system that was never designed to recognize the patterns of coercive control and post-separation abuse that define so many of these cases. In states like Connecticut, more than 30,000 people file for divorce each year. And the small percentage of cases that go to trial often represent the most complex and dangerous situations, where control, manipulation, and fear do not end when the relationship does. Yet our courts often treat these cases like ordinary custody disputes. While divorce rates have declined overall, the number of survivors forced to navigate family courts that minimize or misunderstand abuse remains alarmingly high. The result is that too many victims are re-traumatized by the very system meant to protect them, and too many children are caught in the crossfire. I am honored to have been asked to moderate today's panel. We have a fantastic group of people here. But first, please welcome Danielle Pollack, who is the Policy Manager for the National Family Law Center at GW Law. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you, Ashley, and thank you all, fellow panelists. I'm also really happy to be here, and we have almost 300 guests signing on, so thank you all who are spending an hour with us today to talk about this really important issue of family court and how it's failing children and protective parents and what we can do about it. I'm also, in addition to being the policy manager at the National Family Violence Law Center at GW Law and working closely with Professor Joan Meyer, who's a leading legal scholar in this area. I'm also co-founder of National Safe Parents Organization, and I'm happy to be co-hosting today with DomesticShelters.org. So thank you guys for your partnership today. We wanted to talk about this issue because it's our main focus area at both of my organizations that I just mentioned. And Also because it's the problems in family court are this kind of hidden problem, and this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I mean, of course, for us, it's Domestic Violence Awareness every day, but we want to talk about what is happening in family courts. Many of you are, intimately aware of where the failings are, and I know some of you are sort of new to this issue. So just to give an overview, the core sort of reforms that we have been working on for several years now pertain to changing the state laws, which dictate what courts can and cannot do when they're assessing individual cases. Unlike in the UK or in Australia, the US child custody laws are different in each state. So if we want to change policy broadly and make courts follow laws that prioritize child safety in a whole variety of ways, we have to go state by state to get those changes enacted. And we wanted coherence across the country because the problems that we were seeing in family court were consistent across jurisdictions, across states, across counties, same kind of failings. In essence, someone would bring abuse evidence, usually the productive mom, but sometimes it's a dad. Child would sometimes disclose abuse, or there would be medical evidence in cases. And nevertheless, the courts are diminishing that evidence, not giving it appropriate importance. And in the worst case scenario, they start blaming the individual who's trying to protect, usually the mom. And they're saying that she's the problem. And therefore, to fix the problem, we need to force the child with the dangerous abusive parent. And this is completely backwards. It's child endangering. It's resulted in children getting murdered. And sadly, that also is happening across the country. And we do have four guests, panelists with us today who are bereaved protective moms from around the country who this has happened to. And we have also some on the call I see as guests. So thank you everyone for joining. The core kind of things that we work on relate to a law that we developed at the National Family Violence Law Center called Kayden's Law. It's for all children, but it was named after a little girl named Kayden in Pennsylvania, and her mom is with us today. And it does four core things. It was passed in Congress in 2022, so just a few years ago, after much work by all of us. And now we're working to get it adopted in states. And for it to be enforceable in your state, you need your state legislature to adopt it. So that's what we do at National Safe Parents Organization. So get involved if you want to in your state through National Safe Parents Organization. The four things that Kayden's Law does is it requires evidence-based training for judges and court professionals on all things that are relevant to abuse and child custody and child safety. So including things like child sexual abuse, perpetrator and victim behavior, coercive control, trauma and how it impacts children. Our courts are not trained on these things. So Kayden's Law requires that. That's the first thing. The second thing is that requires courts look at all past abuse evidence. So even if it happened a year ago or 10 years ago, they need to look at abuse evidence when they're making child custody decisions. It has to be considered when they're making a placement. That's number two. Number three, any expert who's going to testify about abuse, they need to actually be an expert and have worked a lot with survivors. They cannot just be these forensic people or bring in these pseudoscientific theories that are so often used against protective parents. Alienation is the main one, but there's other names for it. And then the fourth thing that Kayden's Law does is, well, I would also say it prioritizes child safety above all of the other factors. Every state has best interest factors that the courts have to go through, and many of them are counterbalanced. So usually one of the best interest factors says, okay, courts have to look at, any danger or risk or domestic violence. But another factor is parents have to cooperate and get along, and you have the friendly parent factor. And that friendly parent factor is inappropriate when there's domestic violence or child abuse. And yet courts all often look at these two best interest factors as equal, or that the co-parenting, friendly parent one is more important. And Kayden's law is attempting to make that shift so that child safety and any risk to the child and any violence to the child, anyone in the family is the first thing that they're considering above shared parenting and all these other things. So it's really important that we get this implemented states. We're already seeing it. We have it in 10 states so far. And as we go state by state and get it passed, and together with work from advocates and testimony before their state lawmakers, we're beginning to see a shift both in the culture and the mindset in family court, and in how courts are decision making. So for example, in Pennsylvania, we already have, it just was the effort began in Pennsylvania, where we sit, myself and Kayden's mom, Kathy, and it grew to be federal, and now it's going to many states. But in Pennsylvania, it was enacted officially at the state level just last year. And we already have two higher court decisions that have affirmed the trial court decisions, where they have placed the child safety and the abuse evidence above the other factors. And it's very exciting to see it, because these protective parents are finally getting justice to some degree. And the appellate court, the higher court, is affirming it. So we're building case law now, and that will impact and flow to many cases all across the state. So anyway, that's my little spiel, and I will be quiet now and let someone else talk. I'm not sure who's next.
No, you're fine. Thank you so much, Danielle. I really appreciate your insight on that. I would like to remind everyone, and I didn't do a very good job of this in the introduction, that this webinar is hosted by the National Safe Parents Organization. Danielle Pollack and Betsy Keller have graciously invited me to moderate this discussion, and you'll see some familiar faces, obviously mine, but also Amanda Kippert, our editor-in-chief. So just wanted to call attention to that really quickly. But I wanted to next ask Christy to come on and talk a little bit more about why she's here today. Christy is the mother of Wyland and the driving force behind Wyland's law in California. She also authored the book, Can I Still Be Funny After My Son Was Murdered? Christy, thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for sharing as much as your story as you feel comfortable.
Thank you all for having me and for being here. Thanks for the introduction. Where can I start? First, my son Wyland was murdered on March 2nd of 2020. He was murdered by his father, and his father then turned the gun on himself and took his own life. Since then, we have been trying to figure out what happened, and we were able to figure out that after the protective order, which I got in 2016, which included a fire prohibition, was not put into the system and transmitted to the Department of Justice until 9 months after it was issued, just a couple weeks before it expired. So now that we found what had happened, and unfortunately that gap in time was when my ex-husband walked into a local gun store just a couple miles away, and was legally able to purchase a firearm. And that's the firearm he eventually used to kill Wyland. So now that we have found what has happened, we were able to begin to advocate to get a law, get a law in Wyland's name, Wyland's Law, AB 1363. We introduced that to the state of California in April of this year. This law
Sorry to interrupt.
reaffirmed.
We're having some issues
Yes.
with your audio. And I've noticed that some people say some of the solution might be to turn the closed captions on. That way you can make sure you hear all the important words that Christy has to say. So just wanted to pause to make sure everyone's able to hear what you're saying. So my apologies. If you're able to speak closer to the mic, that's helpful as well, but please continue.
Okay, I apologize. I have my speakers up as loud as possible. So is that any better?
I can hear you fine, but I've had some feedback, so I just want to acknowledge that. I think I've seen
Okay.
nods from the panelists too that the voice you can hear you fine.
Okay, I apologize. I am kind of softly spoken and I'm trying to speak very loud and clearly into the microphone, and I will try to do better. Wyland's law, it reaffirms that courts must immediately transmit protective orders to the Department of Justice. It also gives victims fast, easy access to prove their order was received through an automated system at the Department of Justice. That should prevent deadly gaps in enforcement like the one that led to my son's death. We're happy to announce that on October 10th of this year, Governor Newsom signed Wyland's law into California law. I also wrote a book. It was published in 2023. It is the memories of my son. It's called Can I Still Be Funny After My Son's Murder. It touches on memories before, during my son's life and after, and how everything has been affected, all aspects of my life.
Thank you, Chris.
Apologize, I'm kind of at a loss for words right now.
No, I understand. No, don't apologize at all. No need. If there's anything else you add, I do want to pause to give you a moment, but certainly if not, we'll continue on with our panelists. Thank you. I do want to next ask Meg Groff to join us. Just one moment. I want to make sure that I can effectively introduce her. So Meg is a family law attorney and author of the book, Not If I Can Help It, A Family Lawyer's Battle for Justice for Victims of Domestic Violence in the Poor. Meg, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, glad to be here. Yeah, I have been a family law attorney in Bucks County, Pennsylvania for 40 years. I spent the first 13 years at Legal Aid, where I represented victims of domestic violence and the poor for free. And then I opened my own office, kept that open for 24 years, where I did continue to represent victims of domestic violence and the poor for free. During that time, I handled hundreds and hundreds of cases in protection from abuse court and custody court, and saw the kinds of horrors that everyone here has talked about and experienced. Judges have a great deal of trouble understanding and believing the impact and dangers of domestic violence. When I first started practicing in Pennsylvania, and I say every state is different, but I think it was very much like that in the 80s, the protection from abuse law only included physical violence. You had to either be physically injured, or there had to be threats of abuse, physical abuse, that had to place you, a reasonable person, in imminent fear of serious bodily injury. So you had to be in imminent fear, not just fear. And it had to be serious bodily injury, not just bodily injury. That's, how much it relied on physical violence. There was no understanding of all the kinds of emotional and mental and violence that is perpetrated by abusers. All the kinds of all the aspects of coercive control that that are so injurious to women and children, to victims and children. Judges don't understand that. And they also often don't understand the roadblocks to leaving. They're like, if it was so bad, why didn't you leave? They don't understand that it is very, very difficult for victims who try to leave in order to be able to do it. There's so many impediments. And of course, it's a very dangerous thing. Many of the murders that take place when someone is leaving or shortly after they have left. In custody cases, I found that I thought the foundational problem is this unshakable belief that courts across the country have, that it is in the best interest of children to have continuing and contact, close and continuing contact with both parents. It's just like, that's it. It's gospel. It's important for children to have that kind of contact, and we have to make sure it's happening. And it doesn't matter what kind of parent we're talking about. It's as if a parent was some kind of special entity that had nothing to do with the reality of who people are. So it was like, it's not rebuttable in a way. It's just like, it's important to have consistent and ongoing contact with both parents. So the parent can be a violent abuser. You can have proof that the parent is a violent abuser. The parent can be a child molester. The parent can be a clear and present danger to any child. But if it's his child, then he has the right and is expected to be good for the child, in the child's interest, to be in his contact a fair amount of time. And I think that is the thing that we have to undermine, to make. I've done some research on it. Most mass murderers are parents. I think it's something like 80%. There was a study done. There's no study been done on serial rapists and killers, but it is known that most of them have children. Most of them are married or were married and have children. So they would theoretically, they would be the people that would be in the best interest of their children to be spending ongoing and consistent time with. And a parent who tries to protect the child from this is considered to be the dangerous parent. She's undermining this important bedrock belief. She's trying to upend what we all know to be true. And so that's the problem. We might have to take the child away from her completely to keep her from having this influence on the child. Whenever I've have a case where there's been sexual abuse of the child, that one really is frightening to me, because judges are so resistant to any belief that there could be sexual abuse. They hate that, and they will take the child away from the mother for saying it. They'll take the child away from the mother for the child saying it. I had a case where the child was about an 11-year-old boy, and he reported that his father repeatedly sexually molested him. And they put him in foster care because because he refused to recant, and because his mother refused to stop supporting him, and because he actually said that if he could, he would kill his father. So his father was actually afraid to have custody of him. So they put him in foster care for a period of time until I got involved. And I had another young boy who was shot to death by his father during custody. You know, I had gotten the mother a protection order. The father didn't seek custody at that point. I think, first of all, she had noticeable bruises, and second of all, he was a little intimidated by me. But after she moved to Philadelphia, he filed there and he got partial custody, and he murdered his son and then himself. So I know that it's happening all the time. I saw that a very important study that was done over a 15-year period that ended in 2023, where almost 1,000 children were murdered in these circumstances. And there's no national database, so it may very well be much more. Judges need to be mandated to be educated about the dynamics and the dangers of domestic violence. They have to be forced to do that because so many of them do not have any clue about it. They need to be made to prioritize the safety of children before when they make any decisions about what kind of custody arrangement children are going to be in. And we need to have domestic violence experts. I really think there has to be some way that we can find domestic violence experts to be in these cases. I've never seen a case where there was an expert testifying that wasn't successful. But you know, they're just usually too expensive. They don't seem to have a pro bono thing for psychologists. And I wonder if there's some kind of way we could agitate for that, try to get that, because I think that's very important as an educational tool. But the portion, the ideas that have been placed into Kayden's law really cover the needs, I think, forcing people who come to court who have any influence on what is going to happen to children to be knowledgeable about domestic violence, to have experience, real experience, have it be evidence-based, to have judges be made to train in it so that they understand, to be brought and to prioritize the safety of children. It's supposed to be the best interest of children. And for it to be the best interest of children, the main thing has to be not that they have contact with both parents, but that they are safe and well cared for. That has to be the priority for children.
Thank you, Meg. That's a wonderful like kind of sentiment to leave on, right? That's what it's all about. It's about keeping kids safe, and somehow that message has gotten very convoluted with other people's priorities and kind of a need to exert power and control where it does not belong. So thank you, Meg. I really appreciate that. I do want to turn it over to Kathy to share a little bit about her background and experiences. Kathy is the mother of Kayden and the driving force behind Kayden's law, which passed in Pennsylvania. Welcome, Kathy. Thank you so much for being here. Would love to hear from you and maybe talk a little bit about Kayden's law, what that is. I don't know if everyone here is familiar with it, and talk about its implementation as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy, better known as, I guess, Kayden's mom. I am, if you haven't heard of Kayden's story, I will invite you to Google it. I'm not going to spend the time to go over that today. I feel like fast forward 7 years, we have a lot of different things to cover than what happened to her. When this all started, though, I started talking and I never shut up. I don't know how I got here. I don't know. I don't really have any credentials, expertise. Like, I'm just a mom that didn't shut up. And I had said from the beginning, had one person listened to me, this would be different. Also, I said, I'm going to continue to tell my story. If it helps one person, then it was worth it. And I didn't realize that 7 years later, I don't care what this law it was called. I didn't need a law in her name. It was not out there to get awards, laws, nothing. You guys can call it whatever you want in whatever state of your choice. It does not matter to me. You can call it the Kathy does not care law, the go at whatever you want. It doesn't need to be Kayden's law. And in other states, they have chosen child of awful murdered choices name, and that's fine with me. It's not about that. I have said if it helped one person, I would continue to talk. I can say I surpassed that number years ago. When I've heard from people around this world at this point saying, because of you and your story, because of you gave me the whatever to this, the lawyer listened to me, the judge listened to me, that listened to me. Yes, we have gotten so far in, and I don't know what number will ever be good for me to stop. I don't. It's exponential. I've heard that it saved thousands and thousands of kids and lives. I've only heard of one person that it's hurt, and I'm not going to get into Utah right now, but I also think that that's not true. And I think that Kayden's law is actually saving that child in Utah right now. And I think that that judge has actually done what he was supposed to do, and they just hate me for it. So that's fine. Continue to hate away. I'm fine with that. But there's not a number in my heart. Well, I'll be done soon. I can promise that. I can feel it. It's coming. But what I hear now moving forward is, as much as we've done and Danielle has said that it's gone to the higher level and it's gotten to become case law, I just got 67 messages saying my judge is not listening to me in my state. My judge is not listening to me in my state. What do I do? What do I do? And I will have to direct you back to the expert in that case, because that's Danielle and she will tell you exactly what to do. Sometimes judges are listening. Sometimes judges are doing it to spite us. And sometimes judges are just blatantly not listening. That's in Pennsylvania. I can speak on that right now. I'm hearing it from all over the country that they don't want to listen. Danielle has an absolute way to tell you how to address that in your court case moving forward. I am not the expert in that. I can tell you, I do know how to do it, but it's going to sound way better coming from her because she's the smart Barbie and I'm not. So there is a way to do it. Despite how your kid or how your child is being harmed, we should have never gotten to the point we did in Kayden's case, Om's case, Christy's case, Wyland's case, Pierce's case, Peaky's case. We should have never gotten to that point. It should have, I mean, if you look, actually the Center for Judicial Excellence does count, and they've only been counting since 2008. And it's a very specific list, okay? It says you have to have filed in court, you have to be separated. Like Allie just said, I saw her, me and Ray's father weren't even together. Well, neither were Jeff and I, or the murderer. I hate saying his name. So that doesn't really count, but our kids are still on that list where their other kids may not be. It's a very specific list. Kayden was 647. If that tells you guys anything, that was 7 years ago. We're up to over 1,000. And I'm pretty sure that that number is not up to date because I don't know if the Center for Judicial Excellence just has like they have like one couple people that put this data into their website. And it's a very, very good information data. It's like the only thing we have to use when we say, no, we have 1,000 kids killed. If you don't want to talk about the dead ones, though, I can say, how about we talk about the ones that are still being abused, the 58,000 kids, the ones that are aging out, the ones that are speaking out now, the ones that I was in DC with that sat there in Florida saying and said, I want to tell you that I was in this camp. And the Florida rep said, stop, time out. I don't know what you're talking about. Never heard of this. I need to Google it before I listen to continue to your survivor's story. That's a huge problem to me, that they would say that just because you like, if I didn't hear of something or I don't know how to do math and I Google it, doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? Like there's evidence coming up now that we can now use, like the I'm sorry, I call you guys the strangulation committee, but you're the hope for they
Okay.
have data out
You
there. They're the
great
only
thing
ones
for
in the country doing it. And I've seen it hit one state. That's, as a nurse, that's a problem to me. We've been screaming from the mountaintops. Science and facts are facts. Like you can't debate that. But for us to get them into our court cases, it's like the judge can dispute whatever they want. That's the problem. That's what we still need to work on in every single law case, whatever you pass, because that's what's going to really, science and facts are going to lead our way here, as they have how the ACE factors are playing into effect, how strangulation, we know that we have 800% chance of being murdered. Like all that science is now coming up. But before, they wouldn't listen. They didn't care. That you couldn't get a restraining. I got a restraining order based off of a threat, verbal threat. Do you know how hard that was? They said, we don't care. Don't do it. It's going to make it look like you're doing it for custody. I said, I'm going to take my chances, Your Honor. I don't care. And they said from the beginning, do not do it. 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 I didn't have bruises. I didn't have anything on me to say that this man had threatened to kill my entire family on Thanksgiving. And the only judge in my case that listened to me, he listened to me and he granted me a 3-year PFA, but they whited Kayden's name out on the bottom. They still to this day said I did not have a restraining order in her name. Well, yeah, I did. I'm sorry it was whited out. I'm sorry the AOPC likes to make stuff up still to this day in my case. They don't know how to read. I know these were hard words like contingent, stuff like that, but it was true. I didn't have a Meg Groff as my lawyer. I had a moron that now works at Giant, and I think she works in the deli department, hopefully not around the ham. And I didn't have that. I didn't have groups. I didn't have any of that when all this started. I didn't have a Danielle in my pocket. I didn't have any of it. So that's why I'm still continue to yap on. And I'm sorry, I'm annoying. I wouldn't expect any of you to read my book, but maybe it will. These are fake. I don't even wear glasses. So there's still so much work to be done. It's dangerous. I have to warn you to be careful. And so Kayden's law isn't perfect. Everyone wants to say it's better than nothing, and we changed it, and it's better than, you can call it whatever you want, but it's better than what we had. And it's something like 5-10 years ago when nothing like this existed. Like we've come a long way. So everyone pat yourself on the back for that, because that's huge. And regardless of where we thought we were before, imagine 2016, 2018. We didn't have any of this. Look at Danielle's group. There's 300 of you sitting here. That's a big deal, and that's progress right there. To anyone that wants to hate on our work, take us down, tear us down, you can call me every name in the book. I don't really even care anymore.
Thank you so much for being such an amazing voice in this space. I know this isn't what you intended for your life in any way, shape, or form, but the fact that you come into these spaces and speak your truth very, very passionately, it means a lot. So thank you for that. I do want to keep moving on, so hopefully we have time to hear from everyone. Amanda Kippert is the editor-in-chief at domesticshelters.org, and also the co-host of the podcast Toxic and the host of Voices for Hope podcast with the Alliance for Hope International. Amanda, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me on here. I don't know how I can follow Kathy because
Yes,
I like
I
hearing
know.
you speak, Kathy. I mean, you've been through something horrific, but I really like your bluntness and glibness about what you talk about because I just feel like we kind of need that. We kind of need just like the tough love, like with this topic. I appreciate that. So thank you. As a journalist for about 20 years now, freelance, and editor-in-chief of domesticshelters.org for over the last 10 years, I've written a lot about violence against women topics. And one of the latest ones that I've been working on is this issue of protective mothers being sentenced to jail. And I don't think I'm talking about anything that the 300 and some people here in attendance don't know about. The last session we did was with other media, and I feel like maybe that was more news to some of them than it would be for this group. So if this is news to you, then it's definitely something to be aware of and look out for. But for me, it was eye-opening. I'd heard of it, but I didn't realize the scope of it as I started to research it. I think it's something that's happening with increasing frequency, and it's beyond disheartening. And the reason I think that we need to talk about it more and to a wider audience and with increasing frequency is because anytime I mention it to anyone outside of domestic violence and anyone outside this movement, I am met with basically shock and awe. Like, this can't be real. This can't be happening. That can't be how the family court system works. And then I keep repeating, and yet it is. And yet this is what is happening. There is a theory that as the women's rights movement over the last 50 years has given women more resources and support to leave their abusive husbands, the so-called men's rights movement had to come up with a counter action to put more barriers in place for women. So they are claiming that their rights are being stripped away through parental alienation. So in turn, they have decided to attack women by pressing charges, by saying that they are not allowed to see their children for various reasons. And the reasons that are actually the truth is because they are abusive and scary and their children don't want to see them. But unfortunately, either because of a lack of education or awareness or just patriarchy and misogyny, a lot of times judges are going with this old school idea that two parents are better than one and allowing fathers to have custody regardless of abuse, or they are still believing that if the abuse is only targeting the mother, that it can't possibly carry over to the children, and they are still granting custody to the children, when we all know that that is simply not true. And in turn, the mothers who are trying to protect their children are disobeying custody orders and are either hiding their children or just outright disobeying the custody orders or fleeing with their children. Or in some cases, if the children are old enough, they are just denying going with the abusive father. And any of us who have children know that there's only so much you can do to force a teen to do something that they don't want to do besides literally dragging them out of the house. And then the protective mothers are being punished for this. And being held in contempt of court often comes with a jail term, and there isn't often any sort of trial process for this. The judge can just declare it. You're in contempt of court and just arbitrarily declare a time behind bars. So anyway, at the end of 2024, I pitched this story nationally. I heard crickets about this. It's still kind of confusing to me as why this isn't getting national coverage. Part of me kind of wonders if people in the national news don't think that this is as big of an issue as it actually is. If they really think like, oh, this might be happening in one or two places, but in actuality, it's happening nationwide to lots and lots and lots of women, as I think a lot of the women here know full aware that it is happening. So I just wanted to name a couple of the dozen or so women who've reached out to me so far and said that they are willing and eager to share their stories. The majority of these women have spent time behind bars, And if not, they are awaiting their sentencing to figure out how much time they're going to spend behind bars. And the vast majority of these women who have already been released from prison or jail have not seen their children since their sentencing. Sometimes it's been months, sometimes it's been years, and they are angry, they are scared, and they are living in fear that the more time that passes, the more likely their child is going to be murdered by their abusive ex-partner, or that their child may take their own life because of the situation that they are in. So Gina in Butler County, Ohio, spent a total of a year in jail at different times, starting in 2020 for hiding her child from an abusive ex-husband. Amy in Henderson, Kentucky, was sentenced to 7 days in jail in 2023. Susan in Collin County, Texas, spent 26 days in jail before being placed on an ankle monitor for 2 years for protecting her son. Dee in Adams County, Colorado, spent 8 weeks in jail and was sentenced to another 4 years of probation. Danielle in Guadalupe County, Texas, spent 2 days in jail after her husband tried to kill her. Heather in Pennsylvania, whose story we told in this month's article in Domestic Shelters, because we've started to publish these on our site, and I'll link to it after this, served 41 days in jail in 2022. Tatum from Lehi, Utah, spent 5 days in jail while her husband received no punishment for strangling their child, an act that she caught on camera. Michelle from Virginia watched helplessly as a judge sentenced her 14-year-old daughter to 2 weeks in jail for refusing to see her abusive father. I was also surprised to learn that a number of the judges who ruled in these cases were women. So wrap your mind around that one. Shining a national spotlight on this issue increases the pressure on judges to uphold justice, listen to expert research, etc. So the more word we can get out about this, I think, the more important and the more change it could possibly make.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for just saying the names and saying it out loud. What is happening? This is happening. So I appreciate it very much. I do want to move on. Leah, we're meeting kind of for the first time live here in front of everyone, but I want to welcome you and just give you the floor to share, whatever you would like to share about this issue, about your story. I know you're located in Utah.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Thank you.
All right, great. I think the very first thing that I want to say is thank you so much to all of you who are doing anything. Even if it feels small, even if it feels like we're holding back some kind of tsunami, that everything that you do to protect a child does matter. And that's something that I feel, of course, all of us feel so strongly about. But Meg, your book is on my desk. I mean, Danielle, you were there from the moment that the press got a hold of my family's story, setting things straight. I just want to say thank you to everyone who is working so diligently. And it's true, this is not highlighted the way that it should be. I'm Om's mom. I live just north of Salt Lake City, Utah, and I will tell you, this can happen to anyone. I constantly have to remind people, I am an Ivy League educated medical professional, and I direct a large women's health component of a huge healthcare organization. And it does not matter how many degrees you have. In fact, actually, sometimes that's even to your detriment, as has been mentioned. But 2 years ago on Mother's Day in 2023, Om was murdered by his dad, who then turned the gun on himself. So many of us have eerily similar stories. And, he was killed by a gun that was bought from a pawn shop just a few blocks away from the courthouse where I fought for over a decade. To keep my kids safe. And as has been mentioned also, these instinctive protective behaviors that we have as protective parents to document, to warn, they're usually cataloged and criminalized as high conflict, as custodial interference, as parental alienation, as what happened in my case over and over again. And, my kids' voices were drowned out by hearings, mediation, and mandates. In public, Om's dad maintained the image of a professional psychologist, which was very effective and beneficial in his part. So oftentimes, the abuser does appear so incredibly professional and high influence, charismatic, as they often are. But privately, of course, it was a lifetime of incest, solicitation, systematic sexual assault, coercive control, embezzlement, fraud, tax evasion, the whole thing. And every single thing that I brought up, it was not listened to. In fact, I even had, a journal of his where he wrote that he was a sex addict and a child molester. I submitted that as evidence, and it was in his own handwriting, like not an email, not AI produced. It was written in his own handwriting, and it was totally ignored. In fact, turned around against me that I was, of course, alienating. So I think, when you live under the threat of murder, even if it's not overt every single day, those exact words, like Kathy mentioned, so many of us don't have a black eye and a broken arm. Strangulation often does not leave marks, but living under constant surveillance, as so many of us have, you feel owned. In fact, that's what I was told. I own you. You'll never survive without me. So, much of this story, I think, is so similar, and we could compare so many details, but it's that impossible choice of, do you live with your children under crushing abuse, or do you try to break free? And this is where we all start to co-parent, not necessarily with the abuser, but we co-parent with the court system. We co-parent with child protective services. We're co-parenting with law enforcement. And co-parenting does not mean that it's going well and that there's, equal parenting. It's just that you have to live your life so publicly with so many systems. And then also many of us have to survive on public assistance, which is a real weight to so many of our systems. And that high conflict label, can be, deadly. So I think that I would say, I was so extremely grateful to the National Safe Parents Organization, to the National Family Violence Law Center. A year before Om was murdered, or at least 6 months before, I approached lawmakers after hearing about Kayden's law. It was 2022. It had just passed earlier that year. Said, we need to have this in our state, please. I went directly to the Judiciary Committee, and it was ignored. And then the next year, then we had, an example. And I also, like Kathy, didn't mean for it to be named after Om, but in some ways personifying this is, in some ways, it's the only way to help people understand who don't have experience with this, or else who just can't wrap their head around filicide. But it is real. Children are being murdered, and then what are we doing about the children who are living in this? In fact, I feel like almost sometimes there's like too much press about kids who have died, and not enough about those who are suffering every single day. And I guess I just want to say thank you also to our Domestic Violence Coalition. They were important partners. I know that that's not the case in every state, but we had a very, very strong, fast movement through our super short legislative session. We have a really short session in Utah, and we were able to pass all the protections in Kayden's law, improvements, mandating child safety first, limiting expert testimony, allowing only safe therapies, and then educating judiciary. But I will say implementation is proving much more difficult than actually even passing the law. So that's where we all need to continue to work together.
Thank you, Leah. I appreciate
Thanks.
it. It's so great to have you here today. I do just want to say to everyone tuning in today, we are going to go 5 past the hour just because we got started a little late. So hopefully as many of you as possible be able to stick around for the very kind of final remarks. But I want to turn it over to Evangeline Stratton, who is the family law attorney and the former managing attorney at the Family Violence Appellate Project in Washington State. Evangeline, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Ashley. I feel really honored to be here with you all, especially in particular with survivors. I guess I'm an expert. Betsy and Danielle have told me that I need to say that I am. I have been working as either an advocate or a lawyer with survivors for 25 years. 15 of those at the 10 of those in the trial court, and the last several in the appellate system. But there are so many things I want to talk about, but I'm not going to have enough time. So I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, we do have solutions to get us to a place where court systems and other social systems pay attention, know what to do, and do the right thing. And all of you have been working really hard to get that to happen. In Washington, we have, like everywhere else, have had children murdered, like the Decker sisters. We've had protective mothers murdered, like Amber Rodriguez and Angela Santos, by the same man, father of their children, who was a police officer, who was allowed to keep his guns, who was allowed onto school property. There are a number of systems that are implicated in this. And Leah, I love what you said about, co-parenting with the systems. It's so true. This is a complex web that survivors have to navigate. And most of the time are doing it without expertise or a degree in the law, without access to an attorney, but more importantly, access to an attorney who gets it. Like, that's the difference, right? Like, we have a huge gap between the legal needs of people in this country and what they can afford. But in these situations, it's more than that. You need to have someone who understands, like Meg. So I just want to put a plug in for any creativity that we have around using, technology or narrative shifting work, whatever we need to do to bring attention to this issue. And my current project that I'm kind of working with, not like a official paid job or anything like that, but is A4 Safety Alliance. And we're doing some narrative shifting work using video interviews about family court, and sort of outside of the box envisioning of what true access to justice for survivors in family court might look like. And then, on the policy side, looking at the model code and Kayden's law it's where we need to go. So thank you all for having me. I appreciate you.
Evangeline, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Hope, again, we're also meeting kind of live here as we're here today. Hope is from Arizona and the mom of Alec and Lydia. Hope, thank you for being here today. Again, I don't have any specific questions for you, but I just want to kind of open this up to give you space to speak what's on your mind.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Danielle. Alec was 7, Lydia was 6. They are my 2 only children. They were murdered at the hands of their father in May 2024 in Arizona. Like many of our cases, they should still be here. This was 100% preventable, and there was so many red flags in my case, from domestic violence, mental illness at the hands of their father, with diagnosed bipolar with psychosis. He heard voices. He called 911 on himself and sought treatment. And still, after all of these red flags, Alec and Lydia were not protected by the Arizona family court system. So now, almost 18 months later, I have partnered with Representative Rachel Keschel and Lisa Fink, along with the Arizona Safe Parents Organization. And we are creating the Alec and Lydia Act, and it will include a lot of the points of Kayden's law. And so thank you so much, Kathy. You did it first so that we could implement it in all of our states and save children. I also am a podcast host. I host Voices Against Filicide, along with my partner, Rachel Holloway. She's on this call. And together we've made the Voices Against Filicide movement. It's not just a podcast, it's a place that families can come and learn about filicide and how to prevent it, And we share stories of not only Alec and Lydia, but we've shared Pierce's story, we've shared Rowan Murray Poles' story, and so many other children who have lost their lives to filicide. I did want to say that I have a powerhouse behind me for the Voices Against Filicide movement and the Alec and Lydia Act. Nancy Grace has been in my corner, and I have the opportunity to share about the Alec and Lydia Act on a national platform on her show. So I'm extremely grateful. And even though this horrible thing happened, I'm trying to look at it from the side of Alec and Lydia's legacy will live on, and through them, they will save children. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your experience. So needless to say, this is obviously, it's such a complex issue, and there's just so many facets to cover. I think everyone here touched on completely different aspects of it in some way or shape or form. And obviously there's so much work to be done. I'm going to keep pushing. We're at the end of like the official time, but again, I want to kind of carve out 5 extra minutes. And I'm looking to Danielle right now because you've got this, a great, everyone here has a great perspective in their own right, but as kind of a leader of the National Safe Parents Organization, you see it from, a broader lens. So I'd just love to get your thoughts right now. Any points that you think we haven't covered today that need to be said in this space? I want to give you some time to talk about that.
Ashley, could I just say one thing for a second in response to Leah? I just wanted to make the point that the concept of the high conflict title
No.
is actually a euphemism for one of these parents is an abuser. That's what it was.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That came up in a lot of our pre-conversations, right? That idea that it's not a high conflict divorce, it's abuse. So thank you.
Yeah, and that's such a great point, Meg. And when I went to testify on Kayden's Law in the early stages before the Pennsylvania legislature, and the state lawmakers were there listening and learning about the issues, and Meg was with me, one moment in my testimony really made them sit up straight and like open their ears, like I could see the light bulbs going off. And I said, I don't know if I used the word that, that's not high conflict, but I said, you have to understand, this is not 2 parents just fighting about custody time. One of the parents is trying to protect their kids and keep their kids safe. And one of the parents is fighting for power and control. And they were like, oh, I mean, anyone who's been in these cases, of course, you know this and you're living this, and any attorneys and people helping survivors go through this process. But people on the outside just come to it thinking from the lens that it's an average family and you don't like your ex because they're a jerk or they cheated on you or whatever. And so you're just kind of having this tussle. But it's not. You're usually in this, hostage situation. Your life is in danger and your kids' lives are in danger. And so it's so important that we're all coming together, increasingly so, and talking about this together, because the more that policymakers, press, the general public can understand that this is system-wide, this is happening to many people, this is happening in Utah, this is happening in Pennsylvania, this is happening in Arizona, this is happening in California, this is happening broadly, and it's happening in the same ways. That's how we make the shift, because the response I hear all the time doing this policy work for nearly a decade now is it was a one-off. It was one bad judge. It was one bad custody evaluator. It was one error. No, it is not. It is systemic. It's in the attitudes and it's in the statutes. Our laws are written to back up these ideologies. It's not rooted in science or what we know about child trauma or domestic abuse or family violence. The law, the way the laws are constructed, are based on people's frankly antiquated ideas about what family ought to be. They're not rooted in like pediatric medicine research. They're not rooted in what we know in the domestic abuse field, but we're trying to shift that. We're trying to get so that the courts have to make their assessments based on what we know about valid empirical research, not quack theories and ideas that are, function to undermine people who are trying to protect their kids and keep them safe, keep them alive, and let them have healthy, childhoods. So I'm so glad that we're all here. We're going to keep doing this work. It's hard work, but it's also satisfying when we can make change because we're helping, kids everywhere. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, survivors, especially for coming on, the panelists. I'm trying not to cry through the whole entire time, but it's just so powerful to see you, taking your pain and using it for good. You're all amazing. And thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, all the
And,
panelists
and
and
how
all the
can
guests.
people stay connected with the work of NSPO?
Yes, please get involved. If you're not a member and you signed in just to this event, you can go to our website, and on the homepage, you can request to become a member, and we do monthly events. We'll do more events. So please, once you're a member, you get notices about the events, and you can get directly involved in your state to work on advocacy, work on helping bring Kayden's law and similar protective laws to your state, because we need all hands on deck. This is a big job. Thank you.
And thank you, Kathryn. Drop that link in the chat. I'm just going to read it out loud for everyone. It is www.nationalsafeparents.org. So please do check that out and learn more about the work that they're doing and join in on the cause. So I can't thank you all enough for being here today. It's such a privilege and an honor to spend this time with you. I think we could probably talk for, I don't know, a month, a year straight just about this topic and everything. But there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm grateful to be with people who are making a difference every day. So to everyone that joined us today, thank you for sticking with us a little bit past our scheduled time. And thank you for being so active in the chat and making this such a great experience. We'll leave it at that, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you all.